Welcome to Empowered Heart to Heart, where you'll hear messages of hope, conversations that heal, and interviews that empower. Well, hey, this is Rhonda Simmons, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Simmons Empowerment Foundation, as well as Rhonda L. Simmons, LLC. And welcome to another edition of Empowered Heart to Heart. I am so glad you're with us again, because I tell you, I've been having a blast the entire month of February in our Heart of the Matter series. I keep saying this and I'll keep saying it until God tells me to say something different, but I have met some of the best people this side of heaven. Really, it's the truth. I just put out a call for speakers and you never know what you're going to get. And I tell you, I've been getting the best of the best. And I am so happy to have so many different speakers on our show. But before we go too far, if you're watching us on our YouTube channel by the same name, Empowered Heart to Heart, make sure that you like, comment, and share this video, as well as subscribe and click the notification button so that you'll be notified every single time I post a video to the channel, because I'm posting several times a week. I'm putting out some quality content that will change your life and, most importantly, change your mindset, because we like to provide holistic empowerment for women. You know how sometimes you can have everything going right in every area of your life except one. And so that's why we try to present a holistic approach to empowering women so that we can truly be at the top of our game in whatever capacity we're in. And that's why our tagline says that we all offer messages of hope, conversations that heal, and interviews that empower. And today is no exception. If you want to reach out to us on social media, make sure you do on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the other one, LinkedIn. And our handle is TSEFIORG. That's the short version of the Simmons Empowerment Foundation Incorporated. So we wanted to keep it short and simple and sweet. So TSEFIORG. Reach out to us. Let us know that you're listening, that you're watching. I'd love to hear from you. So today, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you that I have a special guest today, and I am super excited, because if you're just tuning in for the first episode within the Heart of the Matter series, then you may not know that I've been focusing on interviewing ladies from two entirely different fields. One, from the health profession, because February is Heart Health Month. And so I've been interviewing health coaches to doctors to help us understand how to improve our health, how to live a heart healthy lifestyle, because that's important. I like living. I don't know about you. And so my quality of life matters to me. And the other field is I've been interviewing African-American women who are successful in their respective fields and have made it in their respective fields, and they get to define what success is. And so it's been a wonderful journey this month, and I know we're close to the end, but I'm still going strong. And today I'm super excited, as I like to say, because I have a special guest, Miss Tamika L. Sims. She is a 6-time author, a book coach, a publishing strategist. She's at the top of her game. She is the founder of Get Write With Tamika, LLC, where book coaching, book publishing consulting, and book writing strategy sessions are offered. So if you're thinking about writing a book and you don't know what publisher to go to, you definitely want to pay attention to today's episode of Empowered Heart to Heart. At this stage in Tamika's career, she has helped more than 250 men, women, and children tell their stories, producing bestsellers and award-winning authors. I like results, and it sounds like Tamika gets those results, and we're just going to jump right in here. And I'd like to do, as they say at church, I like to present to some and introduce to others, Miss Tamika Sims. I am so sorry.
That's okay.
I think twice.
That is not a problem. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for being on the show. I'm honored to be here interviewing you with all of your prestige and
Oh,
experience
thank you.
behind you. How did you get into all that you're doing? Not just book writing, but book coaching and writing coaching and publishing strategizing. How did you get into that?
So I published first of all, Rhonda, thank you so much for having me on. I published my very first book in 2011, and that was 4 years after I had got out of a very abusive relationship. And I was in that relationship for almost 10 years. And so as I was going through my therapy, both individual as well as group therapy sessions, one of the things that I was encouraged to do was to journal my thoughts and my feelings. Now, if you know me, you know that I'm not the best with like daily devotionals, reading things in 30 days. So I didn't do a really good job of writing those thoughts down on a daily basis. But what I did do was take those journal writings and turn them into my first book. And so after about a year and a half to 2 years of really working on it, starting and stopping and dealing with the emotional pain that came with recounting my story, I finally published it in the book form. But what happened is that was 2011. So 2013, I started receiving all of these inquiries from people. I'm originally from South Carolina, so I live in Columbia. I lived in Columbia at the time. And I started getting all of these inquiries from individuals who had an interest in publishing a book. Now, I'm like, I've only published book number one. I have no idea about the publishing industry or what it entails. I just know my experience, but I just kept getting them at a pretty frequent basis. And so I just started praying and just asking God, is this something that I'm really supposed to step into? And as we can see, I've been in business 11 years this month. And so I believe the answer to that question was yes.
A resounding yes. That is fantastic. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I love the fact that you just didn't do this on your own because it was
Yes.
a good idea or people came to you. I
Hmm.
love the fact that you sought God about it.
Yeah.
And I'm a Christian. Our podcast is
Yeah.
Christian unapologetically. And so
Hmm.
I love that that you acknowledged him in all your ways. And that's wonderful. And I do feel bad that you were in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
No one deserves that. And wow. Okay. So I feel really led right now. If you would just speak to that abused woman or man who may be listening or watching right now, what would you have to tell them?
You know, one of the things that I learned coming out of that situation was you have to love yourself enough to go for it. That was something that came after my healing process because, of course, when I was going through it, as with anybody, especially when you're in the church, my abuser was a deacon in the church. And so spirituality and faith was at the core of our relationship. And I struggled with my faith after that. I didn't want anything to do with God. There was no praying, there was no reading of the scripture. So I had to find and be able to identify what the purpose in all of that pain was. And I really had to seek God in order for that, for me to get that level of revelation that I needed. And so that's what came to me. You have to love yourself to enough to go for it, because when you're in abusive relationships, your world is so wrapped up into the other person, pleasing them and making them happy and making sure that you're loving them enough so that, you know, there is no pain inflicted on you or no emotional abuse inflicted on you. But then there's also the understanding and the realization that there's only so much that you can do as an individual. And once that person crosses over into abusive, having an abusive personality, then at that point, that's when you have to love yourself enough to say, I am worthy of, this isn't love, right? This isn't the type of love that I want to receive. I am worthy of more, and I am choosing myself in this space. And so once people realize and accept that and come to that realization, and it's tough, I'm not going to act like this was something that happened for me overnight. It took me several years to get to the point of where I am today, even to be able to speak about it. But I'm grateful because one of the things that came out of it was I learned who Tamika was, and I learned my likes and dislikes, and I learned to be able to identify my own voice and not the voice of someone else telling me what was best for my life. And so, you know, reaching that point and loving yourself and just really puts you on the pathway to being the healthiest version of yourself.
Wow, what an awesome, awesome testimony. I am so glad that you have arrived here today
Yeah.
in your life. One of the things that I heard you say was that you were two things. You were going to therapy, well, actually,
Mhm.
three things: therapy, group therapy, and
Mhm.
journaling. It
Yes.
seems like the last several people I've talked to, they've mentioned journaling. in some format.
Mm-hmm.
And I applaud you for seeking help, professional help when you need it. I don't know your upbringing, but you know that I'm old enough to know that that hasn't been very popular in our culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I'm from South Carolina, so a very small town. I actually grew up in an alley, believe it or not, a street between two streets. So very, very humble beginnings for me. There was no conversations about healthy relationships, even though my mom and dad, they were married and had been. There was no conversation about healthy relationships. The only model I had for that was them, and that wasn't the best experience or example. And I grew up in a neighborhood, drug addicts, alcoholism. My father was severely addicted to drugs. And so talking about your feelings, nevertheless, writing about your feelings, oh no. I believe, just growing up in that community that I literally would have been an outcast. But somewhere along the lines in my early childhood, writing really became an outlet for me. It's one of those things that's just kind of always been there. So I published poems in middle school, and my best friend and I had written a play, believe it or not, in like fourth or fifth grade or something like that. So writing had always been my healing creative outlet. So it wasn't a surprise when the therapist encouraged me to do that. It wasn't my plan, if that makes any sense. And so I just had to find my own way through that.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. We have so much in common
Yeah.
because writing has always been my thing as well,
Yeah.
and I just love it. And wow, that is so therapeutic.
Yes.
Do you still journal today?
I do not. I do not. I know that Apple, like when I did a recent update on my phone, I think Apple has a journal app that comes with it now. So I have told myself that I'm going to look at that because maybe I can voice record it. I think that'll be a little bit easier for me. But
And
when I have a thriving book coaching business, so I'm always reading, always working on somebody's, content in their manuscripts. So I don't really have a lot of time for myself to actually journal and get into things that I need to do for me from that from that writing perspective. So that's the challenge right now.
okay, so can you, without revealing trade secrets and the
Yeah.
secret sauce to your
Yeah.
business, what what is what is book coaching like? How do you go from point A to point Z?
That's actually such a great question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that question. But so what I do is I like for individuals that may come to me that may have an idea. So let's say, for example, I had one client, and she's always one of my very powerful success stories, is because prior to coming to me to write her book in her 30s, she could not read. And so because she grew up in a small town, Mississippi, and her upbringing was, her and her brother were left abandoned at like 3 or 4 years old. They're digging through trash to eat and all of those things. So there was no schooling in her background at all, even as an adult. So she couldn't read until she was like 35 years old. But 10 years later, somehow she found me and she was able to write a book. So I always like to tell that story because that's what book coaching is. Book coaching of course, it's going to help you to create the content, and it's going to make sure that you have a solid outline and your cover looks good and all of the things that you need to publish from an administrative perspective. But book coaching is about looking at somebody's life and determining or pulling out the aspects of that person's life that's going to help them produce a work that's going to not only change their life, but it's also going to help somebody else. A lot of book coaching, especially when it comes to life stories, means that you and I are going to have to lock in arm in arm, and we're going to walk through the emotional distress that comes with that. Because for many people, Rhonda, especially if they've been sitting on a story for 10, 15, 20 years, they've never told this to anybody. And so all of those skeletons, all of those things that are in the subconscious mind are going to come right to the forefront, and they're going to have to deal with it. But as your coach, I'm there to walk you through that process and help you identify what's going to be for the book so that you can also get the healing, and what we kind of need to, take to God and leave it in prayer.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yes.
But that brings another question to my mind. How do you protect yourself
Mm-hmm.
from all of the emotional baggage of others when people are going through this process and basically dumping their stories on you? How do you keep yourself emotionally healthy?
That's a great question as well. I have a very strong support system around me, my family. They are really good to help me because some of the stories are heavy. You're dealing with sexual abuse. I've had people come to me that were abused by their parents, child neglect, abuse in intimate partner relationships, alcoholism, substance abuse, all of those things that stories that come to me. And I'm grateful, first of all, let me say that I am grateful to be chosen to be a part of that individual's legacy, because it's not easy to recount your life, especially when it hasn't been so good. So I'm very good about, making sure that I'm staying connected with my family, staying rooted and grounded with the people that's in my home so that we have great relationship and connection. I'm very big on downtime. So when I'm not working, I'm not forcing myself to work, so that I also get that sort of freedom and release. And when that does come a story that really touches me or really kind of hits on something that may have happened in my life, I do try to pray about that. I do try to make sure that I'm talking about that so that I'm not carrying that person's emotional baggage and story. And sometimes I've had to do what I call like burning letters. So if I'll write something, how I'm feeling, or if it's connecting to an emotion for me, I'll take it, I'll write it out, get it all out, burn it, and then I never remember it again. So I'll do things like that as well to make sure that I am, emotionally okay and not carrying somebody else's baggage.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful because we want you to be okay too.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely. And I
yes.
think that's the part of publishing and working in the publishing industry, even if it's music, there's once you, because it's somebody else's story, right? It's somebody else's life. It's their experiences, it's their emotion, it's their feelings. And all of that comes out through their words. So whomever has been connected to them and being a part of their journey, it's the same thing. It's the same sort of experience. You have to make sure that you're okay after somebody has come and told you, their deepest, darkest secrets.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Tamika, how did you know when you were healed enough to help someone else?
That is a great question. It was, I think it might have been after I went to court a few times after our relationship was over for restraining orders and, going through the family court system to make sure that was going to happen. So after I started doing that, because that happened right about the same time that I started therapy, it was when I believe I saw him in public and I did not feel any sort of nervousness or angst or anguish or anxiety. It was when I could recount my story without having the tears and the emotional sort of tugging on your heart that happens. Well, I realized, oh my gosh, I am healed from this situation. Now, that's not to say, Rhonda, that years later that certain reminders or things didn't resurface in my life, because they did. It's a lot of what I call unraveling the tape. So you have to unravel the tape as it comes up, but understanding that that's no longer your life, and whatever the healing mechanisms and measures that you put in place for yourself, then you still need to continue to use them, just because of the post-traumatic stress disorder and response that you can still have some years later. So that I'm constantly checking myself, because just last week I was talking to a mom whose 20-something-year-old daughter is currently in an abusive relationship. So I had to put myself back, because I was in my 20s when I met my abuser. So I put myself back in that place just to be able to relate to that mom who was concerned about what was happening to her daughter. So, there are going to be reminders and things throughout our life, but we just have to do what's important for us to be able to heal and make sure that we're moving on and not stuck in that place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am just so proud of you. I know we just met, but I am so proud of you, because, yeah, it's one thing to get the help that you need. It's another thing to be healed from it. And then it's yet another thing to be able to turn around and help somebody,
Yes.
through
Yeah,
the pain and through the trauma of all that
absolutely.
they've been through. And in fact, you're helping so many people now. It's my understanding that you're currently working for yourself and have been for the
Yes.
past 7 years.
Yep.
That
Yep.
is wonderful. So what was the deciding factor to make you make the leap?
You know what? So I had a very good job. I think we talked about, I worked in healthcare. I had an excellent job in healthcare. I have a bachelor's degree in information technology. So, I went to school, I have the education. So I was in the healthcare sort of IT field, quality control, data. And it was an amazing job. Let me go on record, because a lot of people leave and go into entrepreneurship because they hate their job. I love my job. I loved my job. My manager was great, great benefits, great money, all the things. But it was my clients. My client roster was so overwhelming. I had a waiting list. And so again, I go to God, and well, first I sought the advice of some trusted advisors that I had at the time who encouraged me not to take the move into entrepreneurship. But there was just something in my heart that was just saying, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate your thoughts, but there's something deeper here. And so again, I prayed and I asked God, and I said, if this is for me, then give me a date. Give me a date of when I am to walk away from this job, and I will follow your instructions. And I did. That prayer was in September. I was given the date of April 1st. And so from September to like March 1st, I worked really, really, really hard to save, to have your 6 months nest egg, and to have your client roster, and to make sure all of your bills are caught up and everything is okay, so you'll be fine during the transition. So I had all of those things in place. March 1st, I walked into my manager's office and handed her my resignation letter. And April the 1st, I walked into full-time entrepreneurship. But that was really it for me. I prayed and I asked God specifically for an answer. And he gave me my answer. He gave me the specific date, and I have never looked back.
Oh, that is fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, that is wonderful. Tamika, you are such a blessing to many.
Thank you.
And because there's a story behind what you do. This is not
Absolutely.
just a job. It's just not, oh, I'll be a book coach. What do you do?
No.
This is not that. There is a very real and valid story behind what you do. And it is that passion that is shining through this interview. And I applaud you for getting to this place in your life. And so as we wrap up, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? What's on the plate?
That's a great question. So probably writing another book. I will probably write another book. There's one more in me, but I think that's it, Ron. I think I'm done with writing and being an author myself as far as writing books. I'll always be an author, but I think I have one more book in me. So definitely that. I'll be approaching my 50th birthday. I'll be 47 this year, so I'll be approaching my 50th birthday. So kind of, looking at what that transition is going to be like for me. There are some things that I want to do. I do want to have a year of living abroad. So I'm looking forward to possibly doing that. I really have Mama Africa on my heart. So we will see if I'm able to do that, but definitely writing another book, hopefully living in another country, or at least have had an opportunity to touch that continent. My spirit animal is a lioness. So that is also something that I would love to do in the next 5 years, is walk with the lionesses, because there's a way that you can do that safely. So I think that's what it's going to be it for me. It's just really again, fully stepping into my power, fully embracing what it means to be the ink pen diva, continuing to be a model of, women's empowerment, women's entrepreneurship for ladies that, may be of a similar age to me, who may be in a space of transition. I moved from South Carolina to Las Vegas in my 40s. And so being able to just navigate and manage that transition to get to where I am today has been a blessing. So that's what I want to do, is just continue to allow my life to be an example for other women who may be connected to me.
Yes, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. And speaking of your latest book, I see that you have written one called The Ink Pen Diva, The Truth Behind My Pen. All righty. And so I will put this in the description of the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And so can you give us a summary of what the book is about?
Absolutely. So it's the story that I didn't think I wanted to tell. After I wrote my first book of coming out of that abusive relationship, I'd written other books, but nothing personal about my life. And believe it or not, Rhonda, over the years, I had mastered being vulnerable without being transparent, if that makes any sense. Like I could walk you through a conversation where you think you know about me, but you don't by the end of the day, you know? And so that's not something that I am proud of, but I just mastered it because I had so many women connected to me, and I created women's empowerment movements that were born out of my trauma. And so that was, I believe that was also a trauma response, was I'm giving you just enough, but not too much. You know, I'm going to keep some to myself. But writing Ink Pen Diva forced me to be vulnerable. Like I cried ugly, big crocodile tears writing this book, because I'm like, this has been the most transparent, the most open, the most vulnerable I have ever been in my life. But I'm also telling my business journey, which is something I had never done before. People knew me for abuse. People knew me for being a survivor and a thriver and in the women's empowerment space. But my entrepreneurship story, for some reason, I thought I needed to keep that to myself. And I realized that I was mistaken with that. So that's what that book is about. It's about me building up that book publishing business, my journey to entrepreneurship. There's some life that's happening in there as well, but it's not a full-on transparent look at my life, but it's just that life happens when you're building a business. And when we see things on social media and on Instagram and Facebook, and everything looks so glamorous when it comes to entrepreneurship, but it's not. And so in this book, you get a real look behind the veil. That's why it's called The Truth Behind My Pen, is because I'm giving you that introspective look into who I am.
Wow. I'm excited. I
Thank
am so
you.
excited. I really appreciate you being on our show today and sharing your heart and your vulnerability, which can be a very scary thing, because we do have a global audience, and people are downloading our podcasts all over the world and
That's
listening.
amazing.
Yeah, God is faithful. He's been very
Yes.
faithful to us. And so who knows who will be encouraged by your testimony and your story today. And I thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you will just hang out just for a minute, I'm going to
Sure.
wrap this up
Okay.
and I'll be right back with you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I told you that I have met some of the best people this side of heaven, and Tamika Sims is no exception. Oh my goodness. Talk about real talk, because there are so many people who are dealing with abusive relationships and feeling that the only way out is suicide. They feel like they're stuck and they can't get out. But Tamika Sims is a living example that you can walk out of it. You can get out of it. And most importantly, you can be healed from it. Because, you know, so many times, and I'm a witness of this too, so many times you can be in a bad situation that has a specific end date. It's over. You know, I'm sure Tamika can tell you the date everything finalized with her abusive relationship. There was a date. But beyond that date, it keeps replaying in your mind. It keeps going on. You keep ruminating. That is why the healing process takes so long. And Tamika is here to let us know that there is help and there is hope, and you can heal from your traumatic experiences. And so I hope you have enjoyed today's episode. It has been a blessing to me. And I want you to be encouraged. I want you to keep listening to all the other episodes from the Heart of the Matter series, because these women have stories to tell. You know, life is not as cut and dry, black and white as people like to make it or falsely believe that it is. Life has some bumps, some bruises, some knocks, and some things that just happen that you never thought would happen to you. But we need to know that there is help and there is hope. And so keep listening, keep watching to Empowered Heart to Heart, because I promise you there will be an episode or two or three or all that will be such a blessing to you and that will be transformative for your life. So until the next time, be blessed, be encouraged, but most of all, be empowered. And I'll see you on the next edition of Empowered Heart to Heart.